Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday. You know what that means.
Front Office Friday. I'm sick edition, so a little muted.
Quick word of warning before we even dive into today's show. Keith is not feeling well, has not been feeling well this week, dealing with a sinus infection. So this is probably going to be a shortened version of our live show. We're definitely not going to do the full hour here or anything like that. So Keith can go get some rest and hopefully feel a bit better. So if you guys have questions, comments, you want to talk about stuff around the NBA, get them in right now. Yeah, I guess if you're a Lakers fan that's just checking in, you saw the news. I put out the injury report. The Lakers are benching all their veterans for tonight's game. Luka, Dorian Finney-Smith, these guys are all going to be out. Gabe Vincent will be out as well. And I would imagine if I'm JJ Redick, I'm being very aggressive with Austin Reeves and Jared Vanderbilt's minutes in terms of limiting them. I would be, hey, get out there, break a sweat, and go sit down type of thing. The Lakers just making a decision. Hey, we've already got 3 starters out. We're second night of a back-to-back with travel going into Denver. We've got 6 games in 8 nights. Let's a month until the playoffs. Let's not burn anybody out for something like this. I got to say, Keith, my only complaint is that I wish this was an ABC game and not just an NBA TV game. It's the one time, I think most of the time I see the Lakers on national TV and I'm like, damn it. I hate national TV games. This is the one time just to stick it to the league for a little bit. Say, hey, you want to throw this schedule at them? This is what you're going to get. But it is still an NBA TV game. I don't blame them for doing this. This is what I recommended they do. Try to rest as many guys as you can, and then look ahead. Kind of lose the battle to win the war type thing.
Yeah, we said this was going to be, that's it. We lose the battle to win the war. You're going to punt a couple of these games in the course of this 6 games in 8-day stretch with three consecutive back-to-back. So makes sense to me. Call it, just go out there and, hey, we've seen them win in Boston when they took a similar strategy. So we see this every once in a while. And Denver is a team that is occasionally known to just kind of go out there and go through the motions a little bit. So I would expect the Nuggets to win. I'd expect them to win fairly easily, but you never know, how it'll go. You still got to play the game. So let's see how it goes. But yeah, I have no issue with the Lakers doing this. It's, this is the smart way forward. You don't need to be, running guys into the ground, chasing wins on all these back-to-back nights.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking now. I just checked the updated odds, and the Nuggets are a 15-point favorite now. So very similar to what it was in Boston last year. I think it was 16.5 in Boston last year.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Something like that. Let's get some of your questions and comments. Again, this will be a truncated show. So other than being stupid, what are the Mavericks thinking? Nothing they do makes sense. Keith, I talked about this on the Basketball Bulletin. I think it was yesterday. You saw Patrick Dumont, their owner, came out and had a conversation about why they made the trade. And his answer contrasted what Nico Harrison said about, he was talking about it being a long-term move and this is about their future, which makes no sense. Yeah. If your goal was the future, why are you trading a 25-year-old for a 31 going on 32-year-old? That made no sense whatsoever. I thought it was a ridiculous answer, but I still, trying to take my Lakers hat off here and just look at, the situation objectively, I cannot come up with a reason unless it's just they flat out did not want to pay Luka the supermax. That's about the only thing that I can come up with as to why the Mavs did what they did.
Yeah, solid prop work by you. Well done, my friend.
Thank you.
I don't know. I don't get it. The whole, it seems like they're just not on the same page. At this point, just come out and say directly, we did not want to pay Luka the supermax. We were not going to pay him the supermax, and we felt like we needed to trade him. That's still not going to answer the question of, as Mark Cuban put it, if you decide to trade Luka, you need to get a better deal. And that's, at the end of the day, you needed to get the 2 first-rounders from the Lakers at a minimum in that trade. They didn't. We've already talked that to death. But yeah, I don't really understand their roster building. I don't think a lot of it's going to even make sense going into this summer, because you're going to have Kyrie Irving probably coming back, knowing he's going to miss most of next season, and that's going
It's
to
a
be a
good chunk,
major
yeah.
challenge for the Lakers. So they're going to have to really, but for the Lakers, God,
For the Mavs.
I'm
I
just so out
know
of it.
it's okay.
They're going to really lean on AD next year. They're going to have to find a way to get guards in there because that's when you watch them right now. They don't have any on-ball creation ability, so it's going to take a little while for them to get this roster rebalanced and figured out. And it's probably going to have to be another trade or two.
To me, it was this was if you want to say this is a gamble on winning right now, that Nico Harrison's explanation made more sense to me as at least a plausible. Hey, okay, we're going to overload on bigs. We're going to have AD. We're going to have Gafford. We're going to have Lively, and Kyrie's going to be able to handle the ball and do all that, and that's fine. Like if you want to make that explanation, okay. But realistically, you were talking about a 3-year window, and then Kyrie's 35, and then what is this really going to look like? But so you can argue right now that year one of that window is gone. I would say don't even bring Anthony Davis back this year. Year one's gone. Year two might be gone too if we get into a situation like we see so often with these kind of injuries where the first year back isn't really fully back. The guy's not really back to being himself after an ACL injury like this. Usually it takes another year before they're back to actually being the player that we remember. So year two is at least significantly negatively impacted by the injury as well. Now you're talking about year three, where it's a 33, 34, I think, year old Anthony Davis and a 34, 35-year-old Kyrie Irving. Like that's going to be your one window year out of this. That's rough, I think, for the Mavs. And of course, you could say, well, they didn't see the injuries coming or whatever, but still, it's already looking like this is not a gamble that's gonna pay off. Well, I admit, if they were healthy, Keith, I think this Mavs team could be pretty good.
Sure. Yeah, I think they'd be dangerous. I think Kyrie would make them really good. Kyrie and AD. I mean, we saw what it looked like for a half or so. Looked really good. I mean, AD was incredible in that half. As many people said, you got the full AD experience all crammed into one game where it's like, oh my God, this guy is unreal. Let's, go win a title with him. And then, oh, he's hurt already. Okay. That's how it kind of goes. So yeah, I think, I'm with you on, I would not bring AD back. Just play out the rest of this year. They're probably still going to be the 10 seed they are. I looked at it just a couple minutes ago, 2.5 up on Phoenix, who just can't really seem to get out of their own way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they'll probably still be the 10 seed, but just bow out in the 10 seed, get a high draft pick, see what you can do with it. This is where ownership and the front office need to get on the same page. If I'm Nico Harrison, I'm going to look to let's get the best draft pick we can get. And if it's not one of the guys we feel like that's our next franchise guy, then I am looking to trade that, pair it with some players, get another player in that can really push you forward. And if you're the front office, if you're the ownership, which saying this is all about the long term, well, then you probably want to use that pick. But I think it's more. I think when he said long term and he didn't do a good job of explaining it, I wonder if it was what's not good for us in the long term is having money locked up in Luka for the next 6 years, plus with years left in extension and all that. So we'll see.
I think, Keith, the best thing, and we'll move on here, but I think the best thing for the Mavs is just stop talking about it. Just move on. It doesn't seem to be getting any better the more they talk about it. All right. M. Wesley said, what do you think Markkanen's trade value is? He hasn't really improved since his All-Star season. Thanks, taking. And now he has a big money extension kicking in. Yeah, and Keith, because of that All-Star season, he now meets the superstar or the star criteria for the NBA, which is why the Jazz just got fined $100,000 for not playing Larry Markkanen in multiple games. Very clear what the Jazz are doing. They're trying to make sure that they get the best lottery odds that they can get, but they just lost $100,000 because of their decision to not play Markkanen, in part because Markkanen had that season where he played well enough to he made all NBA, correct? If I remember, he went third team?
He was an all-star too, but
he was an all-star, I know,
NBA
but
too, but
he had to hit that star criteria, or is it just all-star?
You got to be an all-star within the last 2 years too.
Okay, it's all-star. So that would have checked that box. Anyway, as far as his trade value, I still think that there's enough teams that would look at Lauri Markkanen and say, you know what, we understand this is a bad Jazz team. They're in a point in their rebuild where they're not trying to win right now. Let's not hold that against him. What does he look like in our system? What does he look like on our team? And I think he's a very attractive player because he could fit in with a lot of teams, I think. So I don't think his trade value is like in the tank or something like that just because the Jazz haven't had a great season. I think most teams look at it and say it's the environment right now, not the player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he is a max level guy. I know people are, worried about that and saying, is he not? I think definitely for the Jazz, who have a really good salary structure around him, he fits there on a max level, and they clearly wanted to build a team around him. And they apparently, it came out today, I think it was some comments from uh, Tim Bontemps and Brian Windhorst picked up that the Jazz promised him like they were going to make real moves within a year or two to try to build up the team for him. So that makes a lot of sense. So I think they'll be okay down the line here. Utah will. I think you're going to see them probably try to push forward here very soon. I don't think it'll be one of those rebuilds where this turns into where, 3 more years and they haven't rebuilt at that point. I think we'll really see them push forward with Markkanen as a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think Kevin Durant will land next season? I think it's pretty clear he's done in Phoenix. They're going to look to move him. They're going to look to rebuild around Devin Booker, retool around Devin Booker is maybe the more appropriate word there. So Kevin Durant going somewhere else. I think there'll be plenty of teams interested. What's the ideal landing spot?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on Minnesota. I think we may see the Wolves do something. There's just we always live by the credo where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's an awful lot of smoke there right now. So I think there's something going on with them. I'm not going to rule out Houston, even if Houston continues to say that's not really a direction they want to go. I think that they'll get involved. I wouldn't be surprised if let's keep an eye on like the big playoff teams. If one of them falls out earlier than expected, will they make like some kind of big move? And would it be like, hey, let's try to go get KD in a big move? Like, could Denver package a bunch of guys together and say, let's try to go get KD and put him with Jokic and Murray, which would be terrifying. I think so we'll see if Memphis gets involved again, and then obviously he's going to have a lot of say in where he's willing to go and teams at this point. Now what kind of package he returns, I think if you're the Suns, where they've made it clear they don't want to rebuild, they basically said we're going to retool around Devin Booker and move forward. I think you're looking for win now players, so you're not looking for a draft pick heavy package or anything like that. You want guys who can help you move forward.
What's interesting is I believe I could be mistaken here, but I believe it was Dwayne Rankin from the Arizona Republic who had the Suns were looking for like multiple first round picks plus a young player, and they want to duck below the second tier apron in any Kevin Durant trade. Like that's what they're looking. Which to me, I thought the same thing as you, Keith. I thought they're going to be looking. They're going to take Kevin Durant. They're going to split him up into 2-3, win now pieces that fit alongside Devin Booker, and that's what their goal is going to be here. The reporting out of Arizona suggests it's more sounding like kind of rebuilding or at least reacquiring assets. They could flip those assets into something else in the future, but that's what they're looking for. I'm a little bit surprised by that, but I do wonder if a little bit of that is the Suns recognizing, hey, we went against the grain. We went above that second tier apron. We said, screw it. We don't care how much. We don't care what rules you're putting in. We're going to spend whatever we have to spend, and we're going to do it. If now they've kind of felt the sting of doing that, and now they're going, okay, we'll fall in line, and they're backing off below that second tier. It'll be interesting to see, because I agree. I think on paper it makes more sense what you're talking about, but right now that's the word out of Phoenix, that they're looking more for like kind of future pieces, which is interesting.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Is where it becomes a thing where you have to match salary on Kevin Durant, so that's a challenge. Keep an eye on the Brooklyn Nets. There's a good chance they get involved in this as a way to kind of move some salary around, because you're going to have, if it was the Wolves and the Suns, you're talking two teams that would be running into a lot of apron issues if they make a trade together. And a way you can avoid that is you can get into a spot with the Nets by kind of rerouting some money to them and putting it into a better place. So I think that's the way that'll probably play out.
One, before we move on here, just one, I think, fun for not for the rest of the NBA, but what if OKC bows out in like the second round this year?
I
What
keep
if
thinking
that
about
happens
that one too.
and then Kevin Durant finishes his career with the Thunder? There's no way he could do it if OKC wins it all this year or anything like that. Like people, even if OKC went to the finals, like he would hear no end to it. But if the Thunder somehow got bumped out in like round 2 or something, then Kevin Durant could come in and say, I'm the piece that puts them over the top, come back, finish his career where he started. I mean, technically he started in Seattle, but you know what I mean? That's and they certainly have the picks to potentially do so. So that's an interesting one. Just unlikely, but kind of a fun thing to consider.
Yeah, I love the idea of that one just for the kind of rounding it back out there. But they don't need him. So let's move on.
They don't. Feel better, Keith. Go Lakers. Appreciate you, Andrew. What can the Lakers see Memphis? Why can the Lakers see Memphis and Houston in the playoffs so we don't have to see? What way is probably what he's trying to say. What way can the Lakers see Memphis and Houston in the playoffs so we don't have to see OKC in the finals? What would have to happen there?
That's
I guess
pretty tough. I don't
to
know
get
if
both of them.
I mean, you would need Houston to drop to 6.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, at that point, Lakers dropped to right. They're all in the same range. So I don't think that's happening with any of those teams. And you would want to be 3 and then face the other one in the 2 seed.
I think you would either require an upset where one of those two teams on the other beat, say the Nuggets or the Thunder or something like that, or the Lakers beat like the Nuggets or the Thunder or something like that in their round 1 matchup to then get through to see one of those teams.
To get those two teams in the same round, it's going to be that's really hard.
Yeah.
Because you would need one of them to fall down, and they're probably not going to fall that far.
Keith, Jason said, who do you have winning the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I don't know. I won't know that till I see the brackets. I really like Auburn's team. I think that they're good. They're solid. They're deep. I really like Janai Broome. Anybody who follows me knows I have Janai Broome as a first-round pick. I have had him there all year long. He's a big favorite of mine. That's where I really think he should go. On my personal board, where I think he will go is probably closer into the end of the first round, maybe even in the second. But I think he should be a late lottery pick or early 20s at the latest. So we'll see when the brackets come out. But why I flagged this one, we'll do our bracket challenge again when the bracket comes out on Sunday. We'll create a front office fans bracket group, and we'll do the same thing. Whoever wins it can come on the show. We will either invite you on the show to hang out with us for a segment or two, and we'll figure out timing and figure out when to make that work. Or you can send in some priority questions, and we'll answer those for you live on a front office Friday or something like that. But that'll be the prize again. We'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, that'll be a good time. That'll be a good time. All right, let's go here. What move should the Blazers make? Love the young core. What player could improve them? So the Portland Trail Blazers, they've been maybe a little feistier for sections of the season than expected. I think they found something with Toumani Camara. What do you do if you're? I mean, just continue to stack young talent. At some point, I think they've found a bunch of guys. They haven't found the guy. So that's the big question for them. Can they get, and maybe that comes in this year's draft. But for me, I'm still looking at, and if I'm Portland, trying to get value for their veterans right now. If I can, that's still, one of my top priorities this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think with Portland, I would like to see them do a little bit of a consolidation trade. I'm glad you brought up their salary sheet. So let's see if you could turn. Yeah, I actually wouldn't have a huge issue if they wanted to make a play for Kevin Durant or somebody like that.
That's interesting.
He won't want to go there because they're too far away. But I think if you could get a player like that who's really good, could lift them into being a playoff team. They were frisky for a while there, and then it all kind of backed off. But a lot of tradable salary on this team because remember, next year, DeAndre Ayton, that's an expiring salary at $35.5 million. Jeremy Grant, $32 million, but that doesn't look as bad as it did initially now. I think that's not the end of the world. You're talking about 20% of the salary cap. It's also only got 2 years left after this season. Then the player option, obviously. So I think there's a lot of movable salary there for Portland. I think they could go in a lot of directions. I think your kids showed enough this year. Let's try to go get somebody and really try to move forward with this group, because I think you're kind of there. I think you're at a time where it's not going to be this group that gets you over the top. So start moving some of the guys, putting them in other trades and putting them together with your kids and try to move forward that way.
It would be dripping in irony too, because the Blazers took Greg Oden over Kevin Durant way back in the day for KD to then go to Portland. That'd be funny. Said, is Jaren Jackson Jr. really going to get a supermax this CBA? I mean, he could, now that Wemby is injured and ineligible for Defensive Player of the Year. He could wind up. By the way, if you bet anybody other than Wemby to win Deep Boy, because he was an actual betting favorite, which you rarely see in an individual award like that, at least before the season even starts. He was the betting favorite. You're pretty happy right now. But Jaren Jackson Jr. could wind up winning Defensive Player of the Year and then make himself eligible for that supermax. What do the Grizzlies do there, Keith, if that comes to pass?
I think so. I wrote extensively about this a while ago for Spot Track when I was writing through the whole thing about why Memphis really needs him to make All-NBA or win Defensive Player of the Year, because his contract's not really extendable at the number he's on for next year at $23.4 million. That's just not a big enough number to extend him on. So what I think you're going to see if you're Memphis, what you really want to see here is you want to see him qualify, then you don't need to give him the full supermax number, but that gives you the ability to get into the 30s, maybe even the low 40s, and then you're there. Now, the question is going to be, if you're going to do that, you have to believe that the Morant, Bane, Jackson trio filled in around them are enough to get through to the compete for the NBA Finals. And right now you're second in the West. You're right in that mix with teams, but is that where people really see them, or do they see them a tier below OKC, obviously? But are they even though they're there record-wise, are they a tier below Denver, a tier below a healthy Lakers team? It's probably close. I really like this Memphis group, but that's what you have to be sure of, because otherwise you're locking into that group. And if you're not 100% sure, that's where they can go. That's going to be really tough.
The concern for Memphis would be if Jaren Jackson Jr. says, and this is where you just have to have the relationship with the player, but if he says, I'm eligible for the supermax, I want the supermax, right? Like, I'm Defensive Player of the Year, give me the supermax.
Sure.
Then you run into a tough situation. I mean, if the Mavs balked at giving Luka the supermax, I can only imagine what the response would be in Memphis. Now, that maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. says, I love Memphis. I want to stay in Memphis. I'm very realistic about where my value is. As long as you take care of me, we're good. And I'm not trying to make it into something that we don't know that it is. But it's something that then becomes available. And I think the Grizzlies would have to be keeping their fingers crossed and hoping that that's not a situation they have to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's in a pretty good place, but it is important to remember Jaren Jackson Jr. took what was seen as kind of a team-friendly-ish extension off his rookie scale deal because he was coming off injuries. And that's part of why, again, when we see those contracts, we love them in the moment. It's like, oh, man, what a really good deal they got him on. But if the player really blows up, then it becomes hard because then the player's not extendable off that contract number. And that's where it can become a major challenge. So that's just the kind of, the good and the bad of really good contracts. It was also a descending contract, which made it a little bit more of a challenge to extend it in the end. But I think they'll be okay. I think they'll get them into a spot. I just want to address something in the chat. I didn't flag one of the questions. There was some discussion about six games in 8 days, which the Lakers are in the midst of right now. And people are like, I don't think it's ever happened before. It used to be a very regular thing.
Yeah, back in the day when they would they used to do 3 games, go back to back to back.
Yeah, but those 6 and 8 used to be a very regular thing before they added time into the schedule and lengthened it out a little bit. And teams hated it. And really, you got horrible basketball out of it, especially towards the end of that stretch. So that's why they avoid it. And it wasn't just, and I know you know this, Trevor, but to remind everybody, this wasn't scheduled that way. This is because there's a makeup game from the Fires that caused this. So they did not get scheduled this way.
It was going to be already a 5 and 8. It was a back-to-back, a single game in the middle, and then another back-to-back.
Which still everybody has like 1 or 2 stretches of that each year. But
which is still a lot, but then they ran out of time to throw that Spurs game in, and so they had to put it somewhere. Jay Gill, can you guys dress in Halloween costumes once you hit 40K? You still owe us Halloween costumes.
You didn't hit the marker.
We
You're
were
supposed to hit
close-ish.
37K by Halloween, and nobody did.
I thought for sure we were going to hit it, and I was surprised when we did. I was like getting ready for all that, but then I don't know. We just kind of hit. It was just a strange lull, like right before the season really got going, which was surprising. But at the same time, given our crossover with Lakers fan, there was a ton of negativity in the Lakers fan base at that point. So I think that was a big part of it.
Sure.
Inside said, when it's all said and done, do you guys think? What's that?
We got to have some level of accountability, right? If
that's right.
We don't hit our markers, we can't reward you. Sorry.
Exactly. When it's all said and done, do you guys think Jokic could be considered the most complete offensive player of all time?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's certainly going to be up there. He's going to be way up there as far as like stats and everything go, because it's like, I mean, he's just that 30-20-20 game.
That's insane.
Was so crazy. Like, and just the way, I mean, yeah, it's nuts. And I hate when the people start saying, oh, he's just out there padding stats. What stats is he padding?
That's like, people just like to, it's more and more people just like to troll. Now they just like to see something they know is going to agitate people and say, so, you know, we see it all the time. We saw it the other night with Luka. The Lakers were down 20 or whatever. Anytime Luka scores, oh, he's stat padding all this stuff. What do you want him to do? Like not score when he's on the court, like, you know, it's anyway. And it's the same thing with Jokic, with any, but just people like to throw just stupid stuff out there that doesn't make any sense. Keith, how do you feel about Derek Queen out of Maryland?
Yeah, I love him. He's somebody I saw play a lot at Montverde. He was with Cooper Flag and Asa Newell and a bunch of guys on that Montverde team. Lee McNeely as well. Really good player. He reminds me of a right-handed Zach Randolph. He's a little more skilled and not as much of a bully, but just a little bit more of a ground bound big. I think he will eventually shoot. He has really nice shooting touch, but he's got a nice off the dribble game. I think he's probably going to be a late lottery pick, maybe early 20s, but he's a player who I think if a team needs a 4 or 5, he can really play. And I'm a big fan of Derek Queen.
All right, let's go here, guys. Don't forget to simulate the draft. All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
We do it every Friday.
We said we would do it every Friday. Here it is. Let's see how this all plays out. And here we go. Oh, happy days in Philly. Man. The season from hell pays off. They jump up 5 spots and they get the number 1 overall pick. Meanwhile, the Pelicans, the Hornets, the Wizards drop down 3 spots. The Nets drop down a couple spots. Toronto jumps up 4 spots, and the Utah Jazz say everybody around us is moving, but we're good right here. We'll just stick here. We're good.
Flagadelphia.
I like it. Keith, what would Philly at this? If they do that, I mean, I don't think there's much of a market for Paul George or Joel Embiid. If there was, that, like, could that be their incentive to, hey, we're going to go all in on young players, Maxey, McCain, Flag, let's turn Embiid and Paul George into whatever we can and move to a new era? Would there be any possibility of that this summer?
I think it gives you options, right? Because then you have the option to say, hey, we can plug this guy in as our 4, and we just move forward with Maxey, Grimes, George, Flag, and Embiid and feel really good about it. Or you could say, all right, let's trade the vets and really move forward with a young core and see what it looks like. It would give you all kinds of options to do a lot of different things. So that's the good thing if Philadelphia was to land the number 1 pick, like we just simulated.
Yeah. So again, we did get that one in. How much should Dyson Daniels get on his next contract? Obviously, the Steals King, the Great Barrier Thief.
That's like the best nickname.
It really is. It is up there. If we made an all-time nickname ranking, it's up there. I don't like. You've got Chocolate Thunder. You've got. Of course, you've got Dr. J. Like, there's some great Magic Johnson, right? Like some all-time ones. But the Great Barrier Thief is certainly up there. But we're looking at his contract right now, $6 million, extension eligible this summer. What do the Hawks do with that extension?
Yeah, I think you're going to see him get probably in the 25 to 30 million range. I know that immediately people see that and they're like, wait, what? but let's just look at it a little bit. 14 points per game. He's at 48% shooting, 35% from three, which is perfectly acceptable for what he is. 5.5 rebounds a game, 4 assists, 3 steals. He's 3 steals per game. The next closest is a 4-way tie between Chris Dunn, SGA, Jokic, and Maxey at 1.8 steals
That's
per game.
insane.
And
He's
Daniels is
almost double.
yeah, there was a year where Rajon Rondo led the league in steals, but it was because the Celtics had such a good backline defense that they were like, yeah, go out there and gamble all the time. Daniels isn't gambling a lot for these steals. He gets a lot of them in on-ball defense. I think if the Hawks are serious about keeping Trae Young and building with Trae Young, they'll get Jalen Johnson back next season, Zachary Reese-Shea. I would keep Daniels because I think you finally found the guy who fits next to Trae Young in the backcourt, and you can really move forward with those guys. So I would 25, 30 million. I know that sounds like a lot, but that's well under a max contract for a guy, extending off it, off a rookie scale extension. And I think that's probably where we're headed.
Yeah. All right. Waggle said, Keith, Trevor, while your relationships with agents, as I guess analysts and reporters, love the pod. Well, I'll go first because Keith, I know you do a lot more like salary cap work with agents and stuff like that. Typically, I'll have agents that will contact me and ask, if I've heard certain things here and there, which is always kind of a fun conversation. You always have to take everything with a grain of salt because obviously they're going to have things from their specific perspective. But it's something where I'm not like I'm not somebody that's out there trying to break news. So I'm not constantly communicating on a daily basis with agents like, say, Shams is or something like that. But Keith, I know you've got a lot of people that contact you saying, hey, does this work under the cap and things of that nature?
Yeah, that's the vast majority of my conversations with agents are about that, as I've started to do more with the draft and with the G League. Every year I write a G League players to watch piece for Spot Track about guys when we're heading into a 10-day season. And every year I get a bunch of people who will hit me up and be like, hey, can you get my guy on the list? Because they know that piece gets pretty good traction around the league and stuff. And by no means am I suggesting that gets guys called up, but it's just agents love to be able to take something that somebody writes and then say, hey, see, this is out there now. You should look at this. So I get a lot of agents who will hit me up and ask questions like, hey, I'm hearing the team's telling me they can't sign my guy for X. Is that true? Because they want to know, do they have an exception, or do they have a cap space, or do they have an ability to do this? So we'll do a lot of conversations around that, but I'm not same as you. I'm not hitting guys up every day and looking to break news because it's not what I want to do. I don't want to live my life on my phone like that.
Yeah.
It's just such a hard, life to live, especially when you have a family. I highly recommend anybody go read Woj's piece with Chris Mannix that he did after he retired, where he talked about, this was, a big chunk of why he was like, I'm done doing this. So
you're just never present.
It's really, that's it. You're just, and even when you are there, you're not there, right? It's like a lot of, I'm at dinner, but I'm on my phone the entire dinner and those kind of things. So, but yeah, that's it. I know of some agents who will occasionally hit me up and be like, hey, I didn't like what you wrote about my guy or that. I had a player last year I ranked very low in my free agent rankings, and the agent was like, no, he's going to get a lot more money than that. And, you're off. And
did he?
No, he didn't. And I was just, and that wasn't even so much about the player. It was more about the position he plays and the fact that there wasn't a lot of money available. And I was like, that's just, that was more of the basis on that. And it's, but I try to be honest in my player assessments. I'm always honest in my communications with agents. But one of my favorite things to do is I will occasionally pump like a G League guy for somebody because I like to see those guys get a chance.
Sure.
And if there's an opportunity to put a name out there, if somebody gets it, but I won't do it if it's like I've had, and I'm sure you have too. I've had people hit me up and be like, "Hey, can you put a tweet out about my guys playing well?" I'm like, he's had one good game, mixed in with 15 bad ones, with that. So but it's fun, and we have a couple mutual agent friends that we both talk to, and they good guys, and they're doing their job right. They're doing
absolutely
trying to get their players paid, and could as part of that themselves, obviously. So but it's It's fun.
All right, let's go here. Mamadou, I think this one got doubled up. Who do you see going to the Western Conference Finals? I mean, I think the easy pick is OKC, just because they have been by far, the best team in the Western Conference. And then from there, you've got this mix of teams. Like Golden State is playing great right now. They're playing phenomenal basketball. You've got this mix of teams where kind of depends on who's. Too. Yeah, Minnesota's playing, and Minnesota also has. I mean, talk about a soft landing. The easiest schedule from here on out. So you've got some teams that are playing really well, and I think it's going to come down to who is really clicking come playoff time, and then what do the matchups look like? I think that's going to go a long way too. Who runs into a team that can exploit their weaknesses versus runs into teams that aren't capable of exploiting their weaknesses, and then goes from there. Because I do think there's a big mix there in the West that could all wind up potentially with OKC in the finals.
Yeah, without a doubt. We'll do a big playoff preview ahead of the playoffs starting, which are really about a month away from the playoffs starting. We're less than a month left in the regular season. If I had to pick right now, I'd pick OKC and Denver. That's just the kind of easiest pick to make. I think those are obviously the Thunder are incredible. And then I just trust the Nuggets the most of everybody else. And that's like 90% because of Jokic. Like he's just so good. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. But that's where I would go right now.
JS, no post game show on Sunday with you in a suite on Sunday afternoon. There was Lakers Nation had this contest going for getting to hang out with us in a suite, and actually we after we got into it and everything, contest still happening, suite's still happening. Just I won't be going. We found out that running the show from there, it was just not going to work. The tech was just not going to be capable of handling it, the situation. And so I'm actually gonna be in my normal spot doing the post game show and making sure that we have that in the live play by play and all that kind of stuff. But the other guys will be there, so that'll be a good time.
Fun though, really fun experience.
Oh, right? For sure.
Get a chance to hang out with people and watch a game together. I thought it was a really neat thing you guys did.
Absolutely. All right, well, Keith, we should cut this thing short here and let you go get some rest. Yeah. Everybody, thank you guys so much for joining. I know we've been a little bit sporadic this week, but Keith's been under the weather, and frankly, there hasn't been a ton of big time news this week, so that's been part of it too. So, but again, Keith, we hope you feel better soon and rest up over the weekend, and we'll be back at it on Monday.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Till next time, see you, and stay safe.